Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon, and the books are now in audio. I'm happy to have Michael Caruso back on and Theo Chino back on the podcast. They both were last on season 5, episode 192, where we talked about what to be grateful for at Thanksgiving. Now, I also had Theo back on. He's been on season 5, episode 128, 143, 164, 187, and 192. We have a lot to go over. And, tell me, Michael Caruso, of the birth of lawsuitfactories.org. How did that come to you?
I was arrested December 20th and charged with intimidation or threatening of a judge. As you recall, I had 3 lawsuits, one against county clerk, one against magistrate, and one against the judge. The alleged threat was a satirical email to the Attorney General's office when I thought I had filed my appeal correctly, and they were saying the case had been closed. There was a little bit of a miscommunication. Mm-hmm. That's kind of how the beginning of that started. So I was arrested. My bond was set. Keep in mind, I have no criminal record, active security clearance with the Navy. My bond was set at $500,000 December 21st, which is 10 times higher than the guidelines. And when I was arrested, I was sitting in the lobby of my apartment. My autistic son was sitting on my lap when 9 police officers stormed in. So I would say kind of the inception of the concept began there, because it felt like something seems incredibly wrong about not only the arrest, but setting the bond 10 times higher than the guidelines for the exact specific crime that I was charged with, which is a class 5 felony. And then sitting in jail for 33 days on 19-hour lockdowns, cut off from my mental health medication and fed food that I know this as a food, beverage, and waste manager would not pass correct inspection for a corrections facility. So that's kind of how I started. Do you have any questions up to that point, Theo or Maryann, to kind of, before I continue?
I understand about the food in these jails because they're not feeding anyone properly there, which is another human rights violation. But please continue.
Well, yeah. So Michael, I'm gonna reach out like one of our audience members now. That's horrible what happened to you, but why should I care, and what can we do about it? I mean, why should I care about lawsuitfactory.org? I mean, that's terrible what happened to you. That's scary, but it's not affecting me right now. So what could I do even if I wanted to do something? And why should I care about lawsuitfactory.org?
Yeah, good question. So lawsuitfactory.org is a nonprofit organization founded by myself, who's a disabled veteran, 14 years honorable service, 4 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. We are dedicated to providing accessible, proprietary, AI-driven legal document drafting services to individuals in need. So this could include anything from drafting an email where you cite your position to anyone, right, that you might have a legal dispute to. And our mission is to empower individuals, particularly those from protected groups, by offering affordable and efficient legal tools that support their right to navigate the justice system, which, as we know, is made incredibly complicated for a reason. We don't actually charge people for any of our services. We work through donations and community support, and we aim to bridge the gap for those facing legal challenges, ensuring the legal resources are within reach to everyone. So just to kind of give you an example, let's say you had a problem with a contractor who started to build or repair your fence. And this happens a lot, so that's why I use this example. Let's say Larry the fence guy takes your money, starts your job, and then all of a sudden, where is Larry the fence guy? You can't find him. And as you're driving through your neighborhood, you spot Larry the fence guy working on somebody else's fence. And you talk to that neighbor and you find out Larry the fence guy started that job after he started your job. And this is common in the contracting world, is that they'll start numerous jobs because they need the cash flow, and eventually when they get caught up, they'll circle back and finish the job. But it sometimes leaves people in the lurch. Well, you don't want to go hire an attorney necessarily to go after Larry the Fence Guy. So what we ask when clients come to us is to say, or rather, we refer to them as we're victims advocates. One of our victims comes to us and says, okay, how does this work? What do you need from me? I simply say, give me the plaintiff's information, meaning yours, your address, and your legal name, and then the address and legal name of the defendant and the allegations. And we can put that into our proprietary system. And again, regardless of whether somebody makes a donation or not, we will help them. And usually it's able to spit out a legal complaint. And Theo and I have done this numerous times. We've seen it as little as 7 pages and as high as 21, just off some of those inputs. And then I've had some that are a little bit more robust, where they already have kind of some legal allegations and some complaints already drafted, and put that in the system, and it buffers it up to about a 35-page document. So it is a robust document. One thing it doesn't, the proprietary AI that we're using now, that doesn't actually spit out is a damages to excess, to sort of quantify and validate that. But with a little prodding, the system will do it. It just doesn't automatically produce that. But that can be done. If I have those inputs, I can have that report in 3 to 5 minutes. So hopefully, Theo, that kind of answered your question.
No, that's excellent.
Gives us a lot of hope, because, a lot of people sit there and say, oh, man, that sucks. I'll never forget, before I knew anything about our family courts and family court land, I'd hear people crying to me about what was going on. And I'm like, oh, that's terrible. See you, bye. Got to get home. Don't want to make my wife mad. I don't want to be 2 minutes late and make my wife angry, because I could end up like you.
And I'll kind of
see you. Bye-bye.
And I'll kind of give you an anecdotal story of mine. So when I did get out of incarceration, Douglas County Corrections Facility, as Theo likes to call it, the extended stay, I found out that my business partner had eliminated my position and had stopped paying me December 31st. And that he had acquired shares from my ex-wife, 25% of the company, and signed a settlement agreement. And I went to different lawyers to discuss different things, and trying to get some legal help, not really satisfied with the response I was getting, and decided, let me do some digging myself. And I went through the contract, which is very time consuming, and I went through the operating agreement, I went through the settlement agreement and the court's actions, and I realized, wait a minute, they're not authorized to eliminate my position because it's based on my ownership, not authorized to sell shares or acquire shares based on the operating agreement. And there were numerous laws and causes of actions, as they call them in the legal world, to apply in this case. And so, long story short, using the proprietary AI, I was able to draft a legal agreement, or a legal complaint against my business partner, which I filed, and then also file a legal complaint against my ex-wife's attorney, because they have a legal obligation, as my ex-wife is an attorney, to ensure that if someone is a victim of a crime or a crime is committed, which in this case was fraud, to report it. And quite frankly, they didn't. So I filed a legal complaint against them. And then I've also found 2 other parties that were involved in this. One was the IT company that gave access to my information to my business partner without my consent, which included medical information, tax information, information on legal cases, as well as my child's pictures. So long story short, this tool allows people who have maybe shopped around what they think is a legal grievance and been rejected by lawyers, at least a second look to say, tell me what your complaint is. Let's run it through the system and see if there are any potential causes of action. And then they can make their decision from there.
So, yeah, why didn't you just call a lawyer, Michael? That's what everybody would tell you. You should seek legal advice from a legal professional. You did that for years, didn't you? Didn't you also, Maryann, right?
So to that point, Theo, when I first started drafting lawsuits, I thought, okay, I've never been adjudicated of a crime ever, and I'd never been charged of any crime up until when I started the divorce. And I thought, wait a minute, not only, and I've been on the planet at that point 50 years. So you've got some really good data, right? That I had an MBA, that I was a partner in a business making healthy income, homeowner, active security clearance, 14 years of honorable service. So it's like the wind's at my back, right? It's like, how could I lose my child, my Second Amendment rights, access to my home? This makes no sense to me. This just seems like a violation of civil rights. Well, I speak English and I speak it well, and I know how to write letters and communicate properly. I must have gone through at least half a dozen lawyers who charged me between $200 and $400 an hour for a consultation, and none of them would take my case. And it's like, well, what in my email wasn't clear what I was looking for? And what I've realized is a lot of attorneys, there's a couple things going on. Number one, a lot of attorneys are charging people consultation fees because they need the cash flow, even though they have no intention of helping this person at all, right? It's just them giving you their opinion. And then secondly, lawyers have to be careful what cases they're taking. It doesn't mean that you don't have a case. It might mean that they either A, don't believe that they can generate an appropriate amount of fees that make sense for them, or that you can pay them, or that there'll be a payoff in a sufficient amount of time. And so while you're correct, Theo, that yeah, it'd be great if you could consult with legal professionals, but these people are also many times business owners or partners in a firm, and they're maybe compromised by the fact that they own the P&L, and that maybe is what is driving a lot of their decisions rather than the merits of your case. Because I'll kind of open it up to questions, but I can give you some feedback of what I've had with the IT company that serviced my company in filing a complaint. But I kind of want to open it up to see if there's any questions and how I can clarify what lawsuitfactory.org can do for people.
If it's okay, I want to jump in, because while you started talking about these small business owners, and some of them work for very large firms, I started thinking about that song, Things That Make You Go, Now, what do we see? Why are all these people pretending and acting to care about your family and everybody else's family? What could they possibly be really after? Okay, some of them actually care about people's families. I'm sure there's maybe one or two. Oh, they just gave up. Why would they be there? And how does their bills tie into lawsuitfactory.org? Maybe you want to walk everyone through how I think we have a reason to, and everybody who's ever paid a lawyer a dime has a reason to knock on their door and say, hey, you got a minute? Could we look at this bill together? Go ahead.
Unmute. Whoops.
Sorry. That's one of the, thank you, Theo. That was a great question. That's one of the things that the proprietary AI allows us to do, is to take anyone's legal bill and run it through the system to see if there's overbilling. And, Theo, I think you and I, we've been doing this since last year on that aspect, right? It's taken a while to kind of get the AI where we wanted it. But we found only one instance where the AI, and we've done manual analysis as well, came back and said, oh, this law firm not only did not overbill you, they actually wrote off some time. So they gave you a break. And there was actually a story and a reason behind that break. It really wasn't the goodness of the lawyer's heart. But to your point is, if somebody who's been through an expensive, lengthy divorce and has questions about the outcome, which one of the outcomes that I think people should question is, if you've never been adjudicated of a crime, meaning charged and found guilty, whether through a jury or through a plea, and you've lost parental rights, which means 50-50 custody, especially if you've lost rights to the point where you are now relegated to the non-custodial parent, you should do some real digging and research in your attorney's bills and their strategy. So I know I'm taking a little bit more of the time that we kind of allocate, but I'll give you an example of my own anecdotal experience. I went through 3 law firms with the divorce. And the first law firm, not only did they overbill me egregiously, about 20%, they underrepresented me. And when I ran, just to give you an example, I ran the permanent protection order hearing through the AI, just said, did the lawyers miss anything on the defense side? And absolutely. So one of the things that came out during that hearing, and just do this for people to listen to, as soon as I told the court that I was on Lexapro, not only was the attorney required to, but so was the court to give ADA accommodations. Never gave any accommodations to that at all. Also, I was a veteran, so I'm protected class. It's illegal to discriminate or have any bias against me, just simply based on the fact that I am that class. And yet the courts pretend and act in a tone-deaf fashion. But there were other things that came up where I found that my lawyer clearly underrepresented me, and did so because it was much more profitable to have a permanent protection order in place, because then it required all communication go through the attorney. So I'll kind of leave it there.
Well, and I'll share a fun fact with you. Just last night, I was out at a festive location and ran into someone who is a public defender in one of the country's most crooked counties in the country. And she shared she shared her disdain for, her mistrust, her distrust, her disgust with family law practitioners, or some people would refer to them as family law predators, and in particular, how they work the billing. She actually said, I've seen them look at their clients' financial affidavits and then back in how many hours they would dedicate to the case. So in the past, we'd go to people and say, well, knock, knock. Maryann, you might know somebody like that. Knock, knock. Hey, could I talk about those bills? Because they don't look quite right. Maybe you could explain them to me. And what happened next, Maryann? Talk through with Michael what happened next and how Michael would possibly help someone like you and everybody else who's listening to this who actually cares, probably because they've been destroyed by this scam. What happened next when we said, knock, knock, hey, remember me? You probably don't, because you're busy tearing up 100 other people at the same time right now. Go ahead, talk about that.
Exactly. We pointed out that, the bills, overcharging, we got no response from 2 attorneys, no response. Now, I was told that if a lawyer returns money or under bills or whatever, that is almost an admittance of malpractice because they know they messed up. So here's some of your money back. But these 2 lawyers are not going to give me my money back in any way, shape, or form. And the one, the Carrie, I didn't sign any document with her that she was going to represent me. Only the main guy.
Yeah, and so just to chime in, that might be an example of where we run that. And you're right, Maryann. So my first attorney, that's where Theo and I started, was the overbilling, and they drew a hard line on that. And I believe it's because exactly what you said. It's a form of an admission. However, what I believe, at least in my instance, is okay, after they refused to engage in the overbilling, what I did is I went back through the legal strategy, right? I had told them, and it's memorialized in emails, that my ex-wife had drugged me with a prescription drug and had accessed my phone without consent. Those are both felonies. Never brought up, not only in the initial hearing, was never brought up in the motion to reconsider, and was not brought up by the PRE. It's like, well, why would you do that? Which I understand what it was. It's like, no. You've been typecasted in the pre-scripted play as the bad guy. Because the scam in family court at a high level is the targeted parent almost always ends up losing the parental rights and is relegated to the non-custodial parent because family courts are incentivized through Title 4D money and federal entitlements once a parent is classified as the non-custodial, because that ensures that they'll be hit with the maximum child support. Thus, the state gets the maximum Title 4D money as well as other federal entitlements. And so lawyers will kind of, as to not interrupt that pre-scripted play, will sort of pick and choose how they're going to represent clients. And unfortunately, and I'd also called out that I thought the judge was discriminating against me based on my sex, religion, and my military status. And she's required by law to report judicial bias, regardless of whether she agrees in it. She is bound by by the rules of ethics of practicing law that she was required to bring that up, and she simply filtered that complaint, even though it was brought up numerous times. So my point is, a lot of times people, when we reach out and engage, the attorneys are not. We've had them refund money, we've had them not refund money. But many times, I believe it's exactly what you said, Maryann, is it's almost an admission of guilt. It could open up other things. But one thing that's great about our AI is because when you do these reports, they're time stamped. So normally why lawyers won't handle cases against other lawyers, especially in family court, is malpractice has in some states a 1 or 2 year time limit. The great thing about the AI is if they put the allegations in and the cause of action comes back, one of which is malpractice, you can argue that you were unaware that your attorney had committed malpractice until you ran it through the AI. And that can be an argument to get around the statute of limitations. So, yeah, that's
That's
just
excellent. That actually, I think, will give a lot of people hope, especially when, okay, so a client, and this, I think this happens more frequently than we know. A client will go in and sign with the head lawyer, okay? And then the head lawyer will say, hey, I know that judge, we're friends, whatever, and then it gives the client hope. But then when it comes time to argue in front of that judge, he sends in his underling. And then your case is torpedoed. How would you handle that? Because I don't recall signing a document with the underling. Or maybe is it an umbrella document that the head lawyer has
So,
probably?
so that's a great thing, a question to ask, and that's one of the things that we would take it and run it through the AI. We would say exactly what you just said. When I signed up, I signed with this attorney. This attorney said this about the relationship with the judge, and then when we got to whatever it is, the trial, the hearing, the motions, I was given a subordinate to this person. Please take a look at this document and tell me, was that covered in the document or is that a violation? And it can run through and tell you what the feedback would be. So that's the great thing about this AI is it is geared towards legal, right? I can't go in there and say, hey, what if Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali fought? Who do you think would win? It's not geared for that, right? That's kind of the other general AIs. But this AI would be able to do that analysis. And some people might be saying, just because I'm going to ask the question and answer it, well, why should I use your AI versus just Chat GPT or Meta or whatever? And I'm not slamming any of those. But I can take a 200-page document and put it into this AI to review it. You can't do that with Meta or Chat GPT. You're usually limited to 4, maybe 5 pages spaced on characters. So you could do it that way. It's just very time consuming. It's much quicker to come to us because, we have the proprietary AI. Again, we don't require that people make donations. We're here to help, but we're here to help the victims of the legal system, not so much the perpetrators. We're not really on their side, that's for sure.
Right, because this underling filed my physician verification forms late. She filed them late. And of course, that was brought up by the opposing attorney, and this totally torpedoed the child support.
Great question. And that, I mean, it sounds like, you know, lawsuitfactory.org would be a perfect fit for you to run some of these things through, because I don't know the answer to that question. But I do think that is missing a deadline is absolutely, in some states, malpractice, right? I have to qualify my remarks because every state is different and I certainly don't know the law. But that's one of the more egregious forms of malpractice, is just simply missing a date. Is that so? And again, I don't know what the statute of limitations is, but as I've stated, one of the arguments, I mean, we're dealing with a case with a PRE who is charged with sexual assault and sexual battery of a parent. And initially, when the victim, or the alleged victim, because everyone's innocent until proven guilty, filed a lawsuit with their attorney, they lost. There were 3 charges in the case, but they lost on 2 charges because of statute of limitations. And their attorney wouldn't go back and argue that this person didn't learn of the assault and battery until they were in therapy. And it was just kind of like a ancillary thing that came up. That wasn't why they were in therapy. But the lawyer came back and said, you have your therapist write a letter, not understanding that if you open that door, like the therapist wouldn't do it, because if you open that door, that therapist is now, that door is now open. And so the opposing counsel could go in and look at all the notes. And you don't want to, doesn't matter whether you're a good person, bad person, whatever. You do not want your notes in therapy being opened up in a court, right? Because you're in a vulnerable state. You're supposed to be in a level of trust where you're not being judged or things are not going to be used against you legally. Long story short, the therapist wouldn't do it, so that those 2 charges got lost. This person ran it through the AI and asked, could we argue this? Sure enough, they did. And now they're going to file another lawsuit pro se against this PRE, stating sexually assaulted and battered me. And here's the statutes that allow me, or the laws and the laws and the statutes that allow me to claim that I didn't realize it till this date. Thus, I'm covered. The statute of limitations no longer applies, because it's when I realized that the crime was committed, as a way to get around that. So one of the, I know I'm getting long-winded here, one of the benefits of using our AI, or people representing themselves pro se, is sometimes lawyers go, nah, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, it's not yours to determine whether you want to do that or not. It's my case. But a lot of times lawyers just won't bend. And so the AI allows people to structure the case the way they want to structure it, which, again, there's pros and cons of going pro se. We're not advocating that you do it, but one of the benefits is that you get to kind of go in the direction you want to go in rather than the direction that the attorney. For example, in my divorce, right? I don't know why my attorneys would not go after my ex-wife. Like, I had mentioned prescription pill abuse, that she totes around garbage bags when she travels full of prescription pills. Well, it turns out there's a report that you can order that gives the entire history of prescription pills that you have. And so they could look at that and gauge that in custody. It just never came up, no matter how many times I brought it up. So that's one of the other benefits of the AI. But I recommend after this podcast, Maryann, that we speak and maybe you give me some of your information and see what the AI comes back.
Well, I really was shocked when you brought up the ADA and the medication, because my judge, as I was on the witness stand, he asked me, "What are you on?" He said it like that. And, when you're nice and you're honest, I just said, "I'm on 0.25 of Ativan." It's like a crumb. It's like, and then he ran with it and fed into the opposing attorney, stating that I was mentally ill when I was using it as a sleeping pill. And now the judge is dead. Okay, so what do you do now with this person destroying your life? Now they're dead. Aren't they lucky?
Well, but there's
Well,
still,
funny.
I'm going to jump in, guys. I'm sorry. There's, we don't even know all the possible causes of action. Okay. Like somebody comes, bleeding into an emergency room and they can't even speak the language. I mean, you know this analogy pretty well, right, Maryann? And they're like,
Right.
and they're screaming and they're bleeding. You're like, where's the blood coming from? And you're looking and it's on their ankle and then it looks like a dog bite. And then you're like, what happened? And you have to kind of go through, people are like just in a haze. They're
Hmm.
sitting there like a nuclear bomb just went off in their life. And they're like, the fallout just keeps on dropping. Sometimes the fallout's worse than the actual initial impact. You wish you were killed when the nuclear bomb hit. It's worse to be alive and be in the fallout.
Hmm.
And you're like, what just happened? What do I do now? Well, this is where we help by asking a standard set of questions. And here's a great one for you. Just to start it off, when you went through whatever legal process it was, or whatever that made you upset, do you feel like your life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness was infringed upon in any way, trespassed, violated? I had somebody tell me, oh, hell yes. And I was like, okay, let's talk about what happened. And they start unwinding and kind of, there's a lot of trauma to work through as well. And then as we start to kind of gather the facts and we sift out the emotional stuff, like, and then I'm, I think I look good in red sweaters, and she said I never did. It's like, okay, that's probably, well, wait, could we sue her for that? No. And then we're just like looking for causes of action, specifically against these predators who go in and take advantage of people who are going through an emotionally unstable time. And they're specifically taking advantage of them for mostly for profit. And was telling somebody this morning, sometimes it's just your lawyer guides you a certain way because it equals less work for them,
Hmm.
and the money's going to be about the same. So obviously, that's what a lot of them are going to go to. Some of them, one lawyer we're dealing with now, he's only familiar with bench trials. And
Hmm.
he's trying to sway his client to go, no, go for a bench trial. Don't go for a jury trial. Only merely because that's all he knows. So Michael Caruso now has a set of tools. Michael, talk to them about what you have in your hand and what everything looks like now to you.
Yeah, so great lead in. So we kind of have this joke that um, the tool that I have is a hammer. So everything looks like a nail. And so to your point, Maryann, where you're like, well, the judge is dead. So, and again, every area is different, but what I would say is, okay, let's say you were in my state of Colorado. If the judge is dead, well, the judge is a state employee. Now, the judge has absolute immunity. The state, that's questionable, right? And so there's actual provisions that, so I'm going through it now, not to make it about me, but it's just easy for me to give an example. So I was arrested on a satirical email, which the Constitution says that we are allowed to express discourse and seek redress. So my email was discourse and my lawsuits was seeking redress. I was well within my constitutional rights. Yet I was arrested, placed excessive bail, which is a violation of the Constitution, and then incarcerated. So when I ran it through the AI, it's like, well, who could I potentially sue for this? And one of the things that the AI came back with is like, well, you could sue the state, the county, but I wasn't even thinking this way. The sheriff's department, because the sheriff's department is the one that arrested me and the one that incarcerated me, and they were present during the bond hearing. And so they know the guidelines. So them essentially incarcerating me is potentially a lawsuit because they know that the bond was a violation of my constitutional rights and I hadn't been convicted of a crime. So leaving me incarcerated without any pushback from their department to the judge is it potentially, again, they would argue well against that, saying, I was just following orders, which of course then our retort would be, that's what the Nazis said at Nuremberg. But as we said, we look at, because we're a hammer, we are looking for nails. And what I would say to your question is that would be something we would run through the AI, but I think potentially the state would be who you would go after because, as Theo said, if you've not been adjudicated from a crime, simply the court taking away any percentage of your parenting rights is arguably a infringement on your 14th Amendment, the right to pursue freedom and happiness, right? There's really no reason for you to be in their courtroom if you're not charged with a crime.
Okay, so I mean that is fascinating okay, because I was incarcerated as well. You know how fun that is. But they did not give me my prescribed medication as well. So I tried to get the notes from the corrections jail. They said jail, but it said prison on the building. So you would sue the state.
Okay, so in my case, what I was saying, that was for the judge. When you asked if the judge is dead, is what I'm
Okay.
saying. In your particular, again, we would run this through the AI. I'm not giving any advice. Really, what the questions ask the AI is, here's what happened. Who would I sue? And let the AI come back with their reasons. Because in my particular instance, what I will probably end up doing is suing the state for the bond issue, right? Because, I mean, this is what trash our leaders are. So
Mhm.
my bond is set 10 times higher, right? I speak English well. I use the AI. I've complained to our governor and our state's attorney. And the reason I complained to the state's attorney, they are who you're supposed to go to complain about a judge. They're also the ones that when you file a lawsuit against the judge, they defend them. Seems a complete conflict of interest. But to be able to document, I think now it's 395 pages worth of emails to both the governor and the state's attorney. Zero response.
Mhm.
So in this instance, for me, I could file a lawsuit against the state and the county and the sheriff's department. That's how I will approach that. Because, and again, some of the stuff we talk about marginal disruption, but I think anyone who has ever lost even a percentage point of parental rights without being adjudicated of a crime could, in theory, file what's called a fraud upon the court. So fraud upon the court has no statute of limitations, it's my understanding. And
Mhm.
the fraud upon the court, the argument would be these judges, these magistrates, the county clerks, they're not listening to any evidence. They're literally just going through a pre-scripted play where at the end, one of the parents loses their custodial rights and is now nailed with child support, which I know people in their head think, no, child support's a good thing. But if you have two people that are now maintaining a house for a child to come in and out, why would one person somehow be rewarded for that or compensated and the other person not? Like, how does that even make sense, right? So the fraud upon the court would simply be to say the actors that were involved in this pre-scripted play were defrauding the federal government and the taxpayers by making a ruling that you were always going to make anyways. Like what I say to people when we make this argument, kind of seems a little pie in the sky. I say, pull out your final parenting plan, the final stage, and then look at the overnights, because it's usually the targeted parent we're talking to. Almost always, the overnight stays are at or below the state level to ensure that you are classified as the non-custodial parent
Mhm.
and therefore hit with the most child support. That happens way too many times for that to be a coincidence. And again, I know I keep saying this, these are all people that have never been adjudicated of a criminal act, right? They don't have DUIs, they don't have drug convictions. Why are they losing custodial rights? It's like because there's money to be made in doing that. And so that's precisely when I'm done with these immediate things. That's the lawsuit I'm going to file against, and it's going to be against two judges, one county clerk, one magistrate. Not because I think I'll win the argument, but if enough people started flooding the system with these lawsuits, it's a lot harder to dismiss. And in discovery, you could ask, hey, I want to see all the cases that this judge ruled on. Obviously, you can take out the information that's personal, but how many parents ended up losing their custodial rights without ever being adjudicated of a crime? And why did that happen? It happened for money.
And then there's false accusations. It's always a false accusation.
Well, again, that is by design. That
Right.
is why they allow that to happen, because what they want is, okay, same thing in my case. I can only speak to me, but I know other cases like this. Oh, let's hit him with a temporary protection order. Now let's make it permanent. Let's give him drug, alcohol testing, mental health, right? Even though I had already provided a drug test prior to them ever ordering me to do so we could enter that a motion to reconsider. Not only did it not change their decision, and they didn't take out drug testing, I had been tested over 400 times in the military. If I already passed the test that cleared me for a year, and you have no drug charges, no convictions, no incidents, why would you do that? Why they would do it? They don't care about false allegations. They don't care about anything. The result is already predetermined. You're just being run through the ringer. So at the end, you end up with less overnight stays than you would need to be considered a custodial parent so they can nail you with child support. That's what all of it's about. That's why they don't care about false allegations. They just want to run this act. We're like, okay, now we're reasonably sure the targeted parent can be trusted with some parental rights. And that parent is usually like, thank God I'm in my kid's life. Some of the time, they don't realize what's been done to them. Because let's be honest, there are parents out there that are just like overwhelmed with life, work, just life itself. And then trying to have a kid just makes it even harder, especially when you've been run through the ringer. So if they go, like in my case, 72 overnights a visit, which comes out to less than twice a week, it's like, whew, I'm in my kid's life, but whew, I can deal with all this other stuff and still have my kid in my life. Thank God. It's like they don't really realize what the court actually did to them and how their rights were infringed upon. But I'm hoping as we work through this that parents will realize, you know, it costs $350 roughly to file a lawsuit. But if it someday stops the crap that's happening in court, maybe I will file a fraud upon the court lawsuit so that when people Google this judge, like using Colorado Resilience advertised my lawsuits, which helped draw out a bunch of people for me to talk to, but that it may allow another parent to cite, hey, you're being charged with fraud upon the court. And by the way, the allegations that that guy said you did, you're doing it to me. You know, I don't have a history of drug and alcohol. Why are you making me take these tests and blow into a breathalyzer? It's because you're placing an air of impropriety that will justify your end decision, which you've already determined at the beginning of the trial.
So is lawsuitfactory.org, that's in all 50 states? You help everybody in all 50 states?
Yes. Yep. We're a nonprofit. So if somebody comes to us with whatever their questions, again, if they want an output that produces a potential legal claim, then they would need to give us what they need. But if they just have questions like your question about false allegations, like you could potentially, doesn't mean you'd win, but sometimes it's just marginal disruption of interrupting someone else's day or causing them a little anxiety, potentially. And I'm doing this in my ex-wife, her attorneys, I'm suing them. And part of what I'm suing them is making knowing and willingly false allegations. The charge that I put in there is, and I'm going to look it up, it's child abuse for profit, which probably doesn't sound like a good thing for a non-family court judge. I'm going to look up the case just to cite it, because that's one of the things that we're putting in there, because I think it's important that in some cases, these lawsuits that people are going to file, they're not going to win them necessarily, but it's the idea that, you know, it'll be out there. And there's ways you can do it so that, you know, when people Google search, but I'm going to look up the exact charge that's made against this.
Because that would be precedence, wouldn't it? Even though you lose.
Well, what I will tell you is the thing that actually, and someone had emailed me, someone in family court victims group had said the thing that family court judges fear the most, and they just said dad, but it really should have been targeted parent, is that the targeted parent is going to file a federal claim that without ever being adjudicated from a crime, that they lost their parental rights and therefore they violated their 14th Amendment. Because if you file that in a federal court, if the federal court just looks at it and says, like, we don't care about the BS that family court operates under, the law is the law. So if you violated somebody's constitutional rights without them committing a crime, you're not allowed to do that. And so that is a concern, and that could be the precedence that's set. That's why I say parents should file these lawsuits, because you only need one to make it through for somebody who's a constitutionalist. I mean, there are judges who, as much as we think judges are like, oh, they're all kind of working on the same guideline.
Mm-hmm.
I had one judge who said, he would say all the time, I am a constitutionalist, I follow the law, I don't interpret it. And then you have other judges who are like, no, I'm in charge, and the state allows me to do anything I want, so therefore I will, without any consideration of the other person's rights, mm-hmm. and really running as if they're a totalitarian government. So it's actually quite concerning to see the way that some of these people operate in these courtrooms. But the point is if we could get one case in front of a federal judge that is a constitutionalist, that could end everything very quickly for them, which makes me think maybe some of these parents might get paid off, meaning a settlement, because someone might actually realize, oh crap, we won't be able to break families apart and violate constitutional rights if there's a precedent. So I'm just going to read this, and then I'll hand it back over to you. So in a case that the AI put out, it said count 17, child abuse for profit, exploitation of an autistic child, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and abusive process. That's where the false allegations would come in to say, like, so when a parent goes and takes a drug test to prove that they were falsely accused, the standard BS response is, well, results are questionable. And the judge will go, yeah, we didn't, that wasn't one of our tests. And, so that doesn't count. It's like, well, why? Well, because we want to run around the track and end up where we want to end up. So there you go. That's that charge.
Okay, so what if a parent, well, such as myself, has already been through federal court, and I made the case go practically a year, so I kept it alive for practically a year, and as soon as I mentioned fraud upon the court, the federal judge he dismissed it, and I took it to the appellates, and then it rotted there for 4 months, and then it was dismissed. However, the opposing attorney told me from the very beginning onset, he stated, I'm going to tell you how this case is going to go. I know both these judges in the federal courthouse, and that's pretty much how this case is going to go. I'm going to get it dismissed. So I filed an affidavit and submitted it to all parties so everyone could see this. It got him in trouble, but not by much.
Well, right. I'm going to jump in if that's okay. I'm going to just jump in real quick and reset everybody's thinking that's listening to this. Do not ever call it child support again, because if it were child support, the judge would personally make sure that all of the money that was being funneled through the state disbursement unit got to the children for the purpose that they're saying the money was needed for. Call it judge's pension support via Title 4D scam and the state disbursement unit facilitating the scam. Another thing is, don't ever say your parental rights were terminated. Only God can do that. And if you don't believe in God, I guess no one can terminate your parental rights. Mm-hmm. That's my few cents there.
Yeah, amen on that one.
To your point, is the system rigged?
Yes.
Yeah, to some extent it is, right? So here's an example of something that happened in Colorado, which is, I'm in Denver, Colorado. A Christian baker who owned his own bakery refused to write same-sex messages on a cake to a customer. I'm not taking a position one way or another, mm-hmm. but if the roles are reversed, it's it's the same. Whoever you're asking to write something, that person has the right of refusal based on the First Amendment, right? You cannot make someone write anything. That's compelled speech. And that's the go, no go in a Commonwealth country. That's why mandated pronouns, that's a violation of the first, regardless of whether you think it's respectful or not. But this case in Colorado, the seven-member panel of the constitutional rights. It's like you go into a public space and you feel you're discriminated against, you complain to them. They ruled 7-0 against the baker. Then the baker appealed it. 3 judges in Colorado all ruled against him. And there was some other judge. So it was like 11 professionals, right? Judges and panel members. The governor called out against this guy. ACLU called out against him. It made its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled 7-2 in his favor. The 2 dissenting votes were Ginsburg and Casamayor, right? So, I mean, I like dissenting opinions because it shows we're kind of, even if it's just someone playing the devil's advocate. But ultimately, not only did the committee rule or the Supreme Court rule in his favor, it severely admonished the state of Colorado and its judicial system. Like, how did you even get this wrong? This is obvious. You don't need, there wasn't a lot to debate here. And just because you have a special interest group that you like, doesn't mean they get to violate the Constitution of the United States. Now, Colorado, being tone deaf, never apologized to the baker, never apologized to the Christian community, and never even addressed sort of like, hey, we've got to rethink our process. We always have to adhere to the Constitution. It's like it doubled down on its bigotry. So my point, Maryann, is the idea of the fraud upon the court is hopefully one of these cases may get to the Supreme Court, and then everyone can reference that case afterwards. I mean, I think there have been cases made to the Supreme Court, but when you talk to anyone who practices family law, and this will be a good cut in for Theo, the C word is never used.
Mm-hmm.
The
Constitution. That's right. Can we say Constitution, boys and girls? Wow. I mean, if you say that word in the domestic relations division, when you're on a pirate ship that is acting like it's a real court of law, and you say that word, all of a sudden you are a sovereign citizen and you're a threat and you're crazy. And Justice Neil Gorsuch, in an extensive interview not too long ago, used the C word right and left. He sounded just like an air quotes sovereign citizen and a threat to this country. Yeah, anybody who uses the C word, the domestic relations division, is a real threat, because if we were to apply the principles of the Constitution, which are more about stopping the next King George from becoming the next King George, then that whole scam would be busted up and everyone would be thrown in jail. Anybody who worked in collusion with them would be thrown in jail. And I'm reaching out to Elon Musk, Kash Patel, President Trump, whoever else I have to talk to. You know what? I'll personally see to it myself to check on each one of these people to let them know whether or not they should be in jail or not. I am offering up my time.
I think it's worth noting, I mean, for example, in Colorado, they just passed a law. I don't know the specifics of it, so I might be misspeaking a bit here, but the gist of it essentially is if a child is identified as someone who is misgendered, right? This means a school person or one parent can say, I think Billy's actually Barber, whatever, right? The parent who rails against that will be taken, their parental rights will be taken away for child abuse. It's like, so not only, and these are the same, they're usually the woke, the alt left, right? I get we're a two-party thing. I'm not slamming people on the left or advocating people on the right, but it's like this sliver group that has found a way, and they seem to be prominent in family court, of sort of finding a way to make the child property of the state, not property of the parent, right? I know children are not property, but you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Is they're children of the state, not children of their parents. And it's deeply concerning how that law got passed and why Coloradans are not in an uproar. It's like they don't actually know what goes on in family court, so they can't see that that's like, oh yeah, not enough people are getting divorced for us to wreck the family unit. We're going to have to get the school involved in doing that. And so, yeah, it's very concerning. And as Theo said, the Constitution is designed to prevent the next King George from becoming the next King George. But yet we're seeing it in legislation that they are absolutely trying to gain as much power as they can to rip families apart. And
Exactly.
if you don't have the trust of your government to protect your family, why have a government?
Mhm. Well, I was going to ask you, are you looking for interns or other partners, in law to file prepackaged lawsuits?
Well, we don't. So good. Not yet. We're at the very early part of the reason why I launched this is it's a nonprofit, and I am in the middle of a lot of litigation around my things, and there's costs associated. So it allows me to use it as a tax write-off. But the vision of the company, yes, will eventually have that. We don't file lawsuits for people. What we do is we simply put the inputs in the AI, and the output is the output. So if somebody wants to file a lawsuit, that would be on them to do that. We don't do that. Right now, where our services are limited to is we have an engagement agreement. So let's say somebody looks at their bills and goes, wow, I was overcharged. Illinois being a great state for this because their statute of limitations is 10 years. So we've got clients that will sign an agreement with us. We will engage with their lawyers to get their bills, their fee agreements. We will run them through the AI and see if there's one fee agreement that we found, that Theo can speak to this. I think it was like the retainer was not refundable, which according to the AI is not legal or ethical.
Mhm.
But we will try to recover money for them, and then the donation is based on what we recover. It's a percentage of that. But we're not at the point yet where we're looking to hire or add people, because we're at the very early inception. We're applying for grants, we're looking for donations, but we are actively helping people. And as the word spreads and as we build, we'll definitely have to bring on people for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
and
good
I'm
to
I'm
know.
gonna jump I'm gonna jump in and add something too. There are a few lawyers that I know that are very interested in what we're doing. And hearkening back to the old days of the mortgage broker world, where mortgage brokers added value in that industry by bringing prepackaged, well qualified loans to lenders who took sometimes loans in bundles. We are on the verge of possibly bringing very well pre qualified lawsuits to some lawyers who may not have to do very much other than help someone file it, because there are a lot of people out there who still do not want to file their own lawsuit. They always kind of feel like, okay, I need a lawyer to file this. And there are some lawyers who are interested. They're on the fence, but they're actually thinking about joining forces with us, because there are a lot of people in the legal profession that, like I said before, feel like most family law practitioners are the scummiest, the hardest part, the dirtiest scum of the scum in the legal sewer. And they really don't like them. So as these billing lawsuits start to manifest, and they might manifest first by showing up in your computer, and you might print it out and read it and tuck it under your pillow and have a nice smile on your face thinking, wow, wouldn't that be something if I filed that lawsuit? And you may never do it. It may be that, like that picture you took at Great America, where they make you an old time gangster or they make you a cowboy, and you look at yourself dressed up like a cowboy and you're like, wow, that was cool. Okay, I don't really want to be a cowboy. When you get this lawsuit and you look at it and you read it, you might go, wow, it really is going to take shape in your brain, and you'll realize what happened to you and say, you know what? Not now. But maybe, where is that thing? A year later, when everything's going well, and something reminds you and you're feeling stronger, you go, where is that thing? There it is. Let me read that again. You have it memorialized. You have it in black and white. It looks as official as any other lawsuit, and you can decide to do with it what you want. That's lawsuitfactory.org in a nutshell.
Excellent. Now, how can you be reached if anyone has any questions?
Yeah, so best way to reach me is via email at Michael, Michael, Caruso, Caruso, 1971 at outlook.com. That is the best way to reach me. And also, because I'm on the show and I got to get a little plug, we do take donations on Venmo at Michael, Michael dash, and the last name is spelled incorrectly because the other one was taken, Caruos. Again, that's at Venmo at Michael-caruos. Donations are greatly appreciated. But one thing I was going to add is one of the things that makes this attractive, in my opinion, because I've been through litigation, is, okay, if I can draft a lawsuit, and as Theo said, it might just be like looking at that picture of a cowboy and saying, I don't want to be a cowboy. But if I say, you know what, I do want to file this lawsuit, I've saved myself attorney's fees. And if the lawsuit is served and a judge rules that the lawsuit doesn't have merit and that I have to pay opposing counsel's fees, which sometimes happens, well, there's a couple things that's attractive about that. It's like, well, if I had to pay those fees, I would have paid those fees to a lawyer anyways. Plus, I can run it back through the AI when the attorneys give me their bills and say, here's our bill. Say, chances are they overbilled you. Say, no, that's actually, you overbilled. I think the bill should be this. So I like it for that reason. That again, no risk, no reward. There's never going to, like, for people that are risk adverse and all the things in their head that could go wrong, and there are legitimate concerns, I get it. Sometimes just being able to look at it and say, well, that's how they wronged me, and now I know it, but I don't want to proceed with that. That's fine. We don't try to encourage anyone to do anything. We just want to make sure they understand what their options are. But for me, that's kind of how I reconcile it. It's like, listen, if I lose one of these cases and the judge says, yep, you got to pay the lawyer's fees. Okay, let me see your bills. Turns out you overcharged me. Let's have that discussion. But if I would have gone through a lawyer, I would have had to pay anyway. And it doesn't make sense for people to go out and develop AI or necessarily buy these custom products that are out there. That's why it makes sense to go through us, just to look at it. It's free. If they want to make a donation, great. And if they don't, great. Send other people our ways, because we're going to help people recover in overbilling. That's for sure. There's the fact that there's 10 years just in one state alone. We're not going to run out of work for quite some time.
Right. If an attorney tries to get attorney fees, isn't that unconstitutional anyway, though?
So there you go. So that's another thing. We could argue, again, there are plenty of judges, and Theo can tell you this, who've made decisions that not only violate people's constitutional rights, but in some cases, they're not even authorized to make those rulings. So that would be something that we run through the AI. Like, so if somebody has a judge's ruling, right, you can file a motion to reconsider. Again, at this point, if this is somebody pro se, you don't care. You may never see this judge ever again. You're not trying to play nice in the sandbox per se. We want to be respectful, but we also want to assert our rights. If there's a ruling in a state, you can run it through. I don't know if that's unconstitutional. I know I've seen it. I've seen judges rule in that regard, because that's the argument, is they're saying you filed a frivolous lawsuit and therefore I'm entitled to attorney's fees. But again, you can argue that. That's the great thing about the pro se thing. And in some cases, the attorneys, depending on who you're seeking legal action again, if it's Larry the fence guy and you're pushing back against him, you say, I don't care. I'm going to go build a fence somewhere else. I don't want to be bothered. But it's certainly a worthy question.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad you came on to let us know this is coming about. This is good news for all of us. Uh, don't jump off, okay?
I will
Slam,
not.
slam the gavels
And
podcast. Oh,
oh,
what's
sorry,
that?
one more thing. I'm sorry, Maryann. I got to mess up your. I'm going to give UFC Yorktown a big plug. Here I am. I'm about to start a coaching session, and sorry to interrupt your flow, but
Uh,
go ahead.
Okay, don't jump off either. Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you so much, Michael Caruso and Theo Chino, for coming on and sharing this great news with all of us.